Hey everyone, it's Marc Bruin again for Simplifying Life and also for Spirit Hive. I'm doing videos for multiple websites and organizations. Not a very romantic background, unfortunately. I'm stuck in my donga, Australian word for a little container or cabin, whatever you want to call them, doing work out west in Queensland. So, not my usual office setup, but it'll do. Hey, today I'd like to have a quick chat with you about work-life balance. That's a topic that's been coming up quite often in my work here out west, but also in my private practice. Work-life balance seems to be one of those topics that comes up every now and then and seems to hammer people quite badly, or the lack of work-life balance that is. Now, what most people say, and the impression that I get from many people, is that they think that work-life balance is something they can achieve, as if it's something they can strive for, a goal of sorts that once you've got it, then life is good. And research seems to actually not agree with that at all. Research says no, that's not true. Work-life balance is not a noun, it's a verb. It's work-life balancing more than anything else. And you're better off seeing it as a process, as a cycle, as something that keeps going and keeps coming back, rather than as a state that you can achieve. If you see it that way, then there's a fair chance that you'll get very disappointed, because once you think you've got balance, then balance goes off and you'll have to rebalance again. So you might as well start seeing it as a process that's in constant state of becoming. Now, what makes the difference between people that seem to experience a certain level of work-life balance and people that don't? Well, the research again suggests that people that seem to experience a certain amount of work-life balance are people that are willing to constantly question themselves and their situation. They are what they call reflexive. They do this inner self-reflection and critical reflection on their situation and their thoughts about that. So, if work-life balance is a verb, work-life balancing, and if it's the case that people that are reflexive about their work-life balancing are generally the ones that seem more successful in maintaining a certain level of balance, then how can you do that? What do you do? Well, the main idea is to constantly check in on yourself. Be very clear about your work and life values. What is really important to you. Make sure you make time to reprioritize and actually look at those priorities and set aside that time to do that work, because that's actually the rebalancing work, is that'll prove you different from many other people. Now, again, in the research, there seems to be a kind of an agreement that the people that seem to experience the work-life balance more than anyone else do 5 things more than other people do, and I'll run you through those ones really quickly. In the first place, these people are willing to constantly critically question certain normalcies, certain "this is the way it is" statements. So they are willing to denormalize certain assumptions that might live in the workforce. For instance, I used to be a lawyer. I know many lawyers and accountants are falling in pretty much the same category, that think that working hard and working long hours until the dark hours of the night is normal. Well, that might be the case, but you don't actually have to take that belief on. Other people might say, well, this is just always the way we've done things, and therefore we're going to keep doing them, even if that might not work for you. Well, the people that seem to experience work-life balance say, well, maybe I'll have to look at that. So these people always are willing to critically question their own beliefs, but also the industry's beliefs about what is normal and what is acceptable. And that could already be a way to more balance. The second thing is that these people are willing to look at, how do I feel? What causes me stress, both in work and in personal situations? What is stressful, and how do I feel about it? So these people are more emotionally intelligent, in a sense, you can say, because they are willing to look at their emotions and say, no, that doesn't make me feel good at all, and then be honest with themselves, rather than just, nah, they'll go away, it won't be a problem. They are willing to look at themselves. The third one is that they are also willing to then reset their priorities. Once they've critically questioned the things that are apparently normal and say, no, not for me, once they've also become honest enough with themselves that they say, look, how do I feel about this? No, I don't feel good, it stresses me out. then these people are willing to say, well, what are my new priorities? How can I reprioritize my life and my work so that it actually fits me better? Then obviously the next thing is to come up with an action plan to do that, to find alternatives. If your current work-life balance is not so balanced as you would like it to be, then the idea would be to obviously come up with alternatives. How can you do things better? What's a more improved version of what you want to do? How can you do things more effectively so you can bring some balance back in line with your priorities? And then the last step, that's number 5, is implement. Take action. The take an action bit is the most important thing. You got to act on it. Now, how do you do that? Well, if it's on the life front, the personal life front, you might have to sit down with your spouse or partner or other significant other and sort things out. Like, how can we rearrange stuff so we can feel more balance in our lives? If it's in the workforce, you might have to have a really honest conversation with your manager or whoever's in charge of your work, or with yourself if you're self-employed, obviously. Then have a good old chat with yourself and say, how can I do things differently? So engage in that conversation. Prevention is always better than cure. If work-life balance is off and you slowly start to head towards burnout, that's a very slippery slope, and coming back from that one is often very tricky. If we can stay in that prevention mode and do our workplace balancing, making sure that we have our priorities right and we keep looking at them, if they are still correct in the current situation, so process more than goal, then you can prevent a lot of bad stuff from happening. And that's very important. Now, I'm very well aware that that's the ideal scenario. You might be working in a workplace where that is not possible, because certain things might well be the way they are for a while, or it might just be crazily busy for some time, and you have to take that into account. The point is to keep critically questioning, to keep looking at how can I do things better, how can I keep balancing in whatever way, shape or form, even though it might be that much. Now, if you got a manager that doesn't work with you, that's obviously tricky as well. See if you can play it higher up, see if you can play it through human resources or whatever other way. And if you're working in your own business, well, have that strong conversation with yourself. Is this really what you want to be doing in your own business? Is this really how you want to live life? And I'm also very aware that's the second sort of asterisk, conditions applied, that in a sense, talking about work-life balance and work-life balancing, it's kind of a privileged conversation to have. It's kind of a first world problem for many people, because so many people out there are just quite happy to have work and to work their asses off to put food on the table, because that's as basic as it can get. So for some people, work-life balance is not even an option. They are just quite happy to keep working because that provides them with the bare necessities. So when you look at that, as like, I'm very aware that this is a privileged discussion, that we can talk about work-life balancing and try and make it work for ourselves. And especially now that the coronavirus COVID stuff is happening, I read a statistic recently that 255 million people globally since March last year have been made redundant or have lost their job anyway, or through whatever means, because of the COVID situation. So for those people, work-life balance is definitely off, and they'd probably rather be at work no matter how hard it is, rather than not having a work at all. So very aware of that, the privileged position that I can talk to you from, and perhaps you can listen to me with, if that's proper English, I don't even know anymore. So quick summary, 5 things you can do if you want to be more reflexive, which seems to be the way to do this properly. Always question whether whatever you're doing is normal, whether it's still the right thing to do. Question those normal beliefs or those normalized beliefs within your industry, within your work. Be very aware of your emotions. How do I feel? What stresses me out? Reset your priorities. Find out what is really important to you in life and work, and keep going with that. Find the alternative steps that you can take to increase the balance in your life and in your work, and then implement them, and keep recycling that process. Cycle through and through so that you can find something that keeps working for you for times to come. It's workplace balancing. It's not workplace balance, but we can definitely get there if we keep working. And I must say, even in my little donga here, even though I'm very busy, I think I've got some level of workplace balance going, because I just keep reprioritizing whenever I need to. Not that I'm perfect, but it's finding that thing that works for you. And how do you feel that? Well, you feel good, and it all seems to be working. Yeah, so that there's a bit of an ending. Is like, well, does it work for you? Is it working? Is that all effective? So I hope that helps. This is definitely research-based stuff. I just haven't sucked that out of my thumb. Did some reading on it. So that's where the research seems to go. So if you've got questions on that, please let me know. You know where to reach me. Text me, find me on LinkedIn, websites, wherever. Reply to this post or do this video. And I hope to keep talking with you and hope everything's going well. Have a good one. See ya.